Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tommy Johnson. I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's special event, Food for Thought, Rethinking Food Waste as Fuel for Growth. The Portland Regional Chamber is proud to partner with our friends at the University of Maine's Portland Gateway and Office of Innovation and Economic Development to bring you this three-part series focused on the topic of food. Every other week from May 25th through June 22nd, on Wednesdays at noon, we'll deliver a unique presentation that is focused on the topic of food as it relates to our community. The goal is to help reshape the mindset of how we must continually evolve our understanding and habits through the lens of food utilization. Now, today's topic, Rethinking Food Waste as Fuel for Growth, will feature representatives from three Maine organizations and chamber members who are doing just that. You'll hear from representatives from Allagash Brewing, Luke's Lobster, and Preble Street. And here to moderate today is Susanne Lee, faculty fellow at the University of Maine's Senator George G. Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions. Now, like all Chamber's virtual events, today's presentation is free and will be recorded and made available for free replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. To keep up to date on all Chamber news and events, please visit our website, portlandregion.com, check out our events page, and sign up for our weekly email newsletter while you're there. Now, before we get to today's presentation, I would like to remind you that if you have questions for our panel, please type them in the Zoom chat below, and I will relay them to our presenters at the end of the presentation. At this point, I'd like to introduce Susanne Lee. Susanne is an entrepreneurial senior exec who has created, launched, and operated successful multi-million-dollar consumer products brands and businesses with large Fortune 100 companies, as well as lean startup teams. Susanne was formerly the executive in residence at the Maine Business School, where she utilized her business management experience as well as her marketing background to bring real-world component to student courses and experiential learning opportunities. She's helped build bridges between UMaine students and leading Maine-based businesses. Her goal was to engage Maine's employers in student programs that make UMaine students, quote-unquote, work ready, and also to help support sustainable economic growth for Maine. In 2019, Susanne was awarded a Mitchell Center grant to fund multidisciplinary student research projects identifying sustainable food waste solutions for Maine businesses, bringing a real-world sustainable business opportunity to the Maine Business School. Please join me in welcoming Susanne Lee. Take it away, Susanne.
Thank you, Tommy, for the nice introduction. And thank you to you and the Portland Chamber for hosting this terrific series, Food for Thought. We really appreciate it. And I'm pleased to be representing the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine and the faculty and student team that is working to help the state end food waste. So, I want to thank you for this opportunity. And in the work that we're doing at the Mitchell Center, it would not be happening without the partnership with great people and organizations throughout the state who are more than doing their part to focus on food waste and, again, the opportunity to end food waste. And so this morning, we're so pleased to be able to present, as you said, three organizations in Portland, chamber members. We have this morning with us Zoe Melia from Allagash Brewing Company. She's the environmental sustainability coordinator there. Allagash Brewery, as everybody knows, one of Maine's leading craft breweries and winner of Brewer and Brewery of the Year at the Great American Beer Festival this last year. So super excited to have them. Also, we have Ben Conniff, who is the co-founder and chief innovation officer for Luke's Lobsters, a super successful restaurant group with over 30 locations throughout the country and the world, and doing a terrific job also as a partner here in Portland. So we're pleased to have Ben, and then Natalie Morello, who is the food programs director for Preble Street. And, everybody is familiar with Preble Street, such an inspiring and amazing organization that has really a comprehensive and collaborative approach, to ending hunger in Maine. And I think you'll be surprised this morning at a number of the new initiatives that they also have. So I wanted to just give the brief introduction to you all, but I would love to let you tell the audience about your organizations and really what you're seeing about the food waste challenges and the opportunities that your organization as it's addressing them. So if you would like to start, maybe we'll begin with Zoe.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Susan, so much for the introduction, and thank you for having us here today. So I work at Allagash Brewing Company. I'm the environmental sustainability coordinator there. For anyone who's not familiar with Allagash, we were founded in Portland in 1995, and our focus is mainly on Belgian-inspired beers. If you've ever had the Allagash White, that is our number one. and So I am pretty new to my role at Allagash, or in this position itself as the sustainability coordinator. So I've been in this role for about 2.5 months, but I've actually been at Allagash for over 4.5 years. So I'm super familiar with Allagash and what we've done focused around sustainability. And sustainability is really core to our brand, and it's been a part of our business since 1995. Rob Todd, our owner and founder, is very passionate about this part of the business, and makes it, like I mentioned, very core to really the things we're doing every single day. So my role is really to engage and educate staff and stakeholders, and to look for opportunities to improve and expand our sustainability efforts, but really focus on the waste challenges and opportunities. Beer is a very resource intensive product. Water, hops, grains, many other different ingredients that are involved. So, we work very closely with the farmers who help us create our beer. So we understand the time, the energy, the resources it takes to produce these materials. So we want to use these resources really thoughtfully. We're always looking for ways to improve our practices, but I'll talk about it a little bit later, but looking for ways to send these materials off to farmers to use for feed for cattle, for oysters even, as well as compost and fertilizer. So there's many things that we're doing to try and mitigate that, that waste. Thank you.
Sure. How about Ben? We'll have you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me here. So many of you may know Luke's Lobster, some may not, but people generally know us as a restaurant business. They visited the restaurant down in Portland or in another city around the country. But really the restaurants are the tip of the iceberg for our business. We're a vertically integrated seafood company, so that means we buy lobster and other seafood directly from fishermen. We transport it from the dock into our processing facility, which is in Saco. And we handle every step of the stunning, separating, cooking, picking, packing, and shipping of that product. So whereas a lot of restaurants control waste just in their prep, in their kitchen, in their restaurant, really our biggest opportunity to deal with food waste is further up the supply chain in the manufacturing stage, where we take in whole lobster and we generate lobster products. So I like, when I'm talking to people about this in person, I like to ask, raise your hand if you've eaten a whole lobster before. And generally most people will raise their hand, and then I'll tell them they're all wrong, because nobody eats a whole lobster. You eat meat out of the claws and knuckles and the tail, and then the rest of it generally gets wasted. So there are huge opportunities to make value add products from all that food waste, starting with the parts that are just edible and delicious and just hard to get at if you're eating it yourself. So designing systems to extract those delicious edible parts of the lobster and make food products from them, and then taking the inedible parts and thinking about ways to upcycle those into amazing value-added products as well. So that when you look at, if we process ultimately 5 million pounds of Maine lobster a year, every year we want to be looking at the yield of what we create in edible and value add products versus what goes to compost, and reduce that compost number as much as we can over time. I think it used to be that sort of just composting your food waste was sort of the holy grail, but at this stage, I think we're beyond that. Compost is great, but how can you find, higher and higher value uses for that food that's getting wasted? So that's really our biggest focus in this space.
Great, thank you. And Natalie?
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for the introduction, Suzanne. I'm Natalie Varallo. I work as the Food Programs Director for Preble Street. We're a local nonprofit that offers barrier-free services to people experiencing homelessness, hunger, housing challenges, and poverty. And within food programs, we're entirely focused on increasing food security for Cumberland County and surrounding regions. We're an operation that works almost entirely with donated, expiring, and end-of-life ingredients. So waste plays a really central focus in our day-to-day work. We utilize donated ingredients to prepare approximately 1,500 meals a day and dozens of food boxes to be distributed around the community in an average of over 1 million meals a year donated to the community. And so our food service operations are often really responsible for high volumes of waste, as Ben has mentioned, and Zoe as well. And we're really at the end of the supply chain, so we're even more susceptible to waste in every step of the work that we're doing. So we try to adjust how we work with specific ingredients and be creative about how we utilize these ingredients and resources to be able to create healthy, nutritious meals for our clients. And it allows us to be a lot more creative in meal preparation. And finally, as an organization within food programs with a relatively small budget, working with things that are almost about to enter the waste stream gives us a lot more flexibility within the work that we do as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. It's terrific to really learn more about your businesses. And I would just say, at the Mitchell Center, when we talk about sustainability solutions for food waste, we talk about a triple bottom line benefit, that we recognize that there has to be a financial benefit. First of all, you can't consider it a sustainable solution if there isn't money to keep it going. So there has to be a financial component as well as the social component. It has to work for people. It has to work for people in your organizations. It has to work for people in your community, because again, it won't be sustainable otherwise. And then finally, environmentally, we have to, in order for something to be long-term, you need to have the resources, long-term environmental resources to keep it going. So we believe that, a triple bottom line is really important to these. And I think that each of your organizations in the work that you're doing, exemplifies this, because you are leading organizations in the sectors that you operate in. You are the best. And yet you are spending time to consider food waste as a priority, as a piece of your business. So maybe if you could just each talk about how you balance that. You first and foremost, you're an organization that has a mission, and then you also try to deal with food waste. And how do you balance those? How do you look at that? Because a lot of companies would say, hey, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we can't do this. This is, it's nice later on when we're, 20 years down the road, talk to us and come back and we'll look at it. So how do you view it? And maybe this time we'll start with Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we're kind of unique in the supply chain, is that we're at the end of the supply chain. So we're receiving those as donated ingredients. And so it is financially beneficial for us. And it's also, as I mentioned, more engaging for staff. Processing end-of-life ingredients allows us to make financial savings and use those savings to purchase other quality ingredients to prepare meals with. We also do have an incredible team of volunteers that support the overall process. But as a little example, sometimes we'll receive 5,000 to 10,000 pounds of produce on one specific day, and it only has a couple days left before it is exhausted and needs to be thrown away. So for example, we'll receive 5,000 pounds of tomatoes. They'll have 2 days left, and we have the opportunity to process and preserve these ingredients. Now, without utilizing processing methods, we would have to throw away a majority of those tomatoes. And then a couple weeks down the line, we would have to buy canned tomatoes to support our operations. So instead, we process those tomatoes, use them in meals, send them to clients when applicable, and we're able to have cost savings and also packaging savings by not purchasing those prepackaged canned tomatoes. And so that's just one example for an ingredient that we use like that. But I find that because it's kind of baked into our whole food program's mission and the way that we operate as a department and as an overall organization, it's built in. So it's part of our process, and we don't really see it as an extra financial cost, and we are able to find a lot of benefits within it.
Yeah, including the disposal savings of all those tomatoes that you didn't have to pay somebody to cart away, and the labor cost to do that. So good for you. So Ben, how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're a business first and foremost, right? And if we don't make some amount of profit every year, we cease to exist. So that has to be a priority. And of course, our first reason for being is to make delicious seafood that our customers are going to eat. And so that has to be a priority. And so yes, it can be difficult to look at something that you might perceive as an environmental benefit first and prioritize it. But I will say, first off, on the financial side, there are huge benefits for taking something that you once paid a trash bill to get hauled away and turn that into something that you can sell and make money on. So, when you think about that, I mean, when we started processing lobster in 2013, we were getting 25 to 30% meat yield from our lobsters, and everything else was getting hauled away by a composter. And we weren't selling that compost, we were paying to have that hauled away. So every pound that we divert from that compost hauling and put into a value add product saves us money on hauling. And then it's a matter of just making sure that we find the end product, the destination that's going to pay enough to justify labor and energy that goes into salvaging and turning that product into its next stage. But I think Natalie's point about processing being so important, processing in the context of food sounds like a dirty word now because there's so much terrible processed food out there, and there's so many horrible things that people do when you think about processing. But that's not all processing. Processing can just mean chopping up your tomatoes and canning them or making them into sauce or putting them in the freezer. Like that's really the traditional means of processing. And same with lobster. It's just finding unique cooking methods, freezing methods, and storage methods. And so for us, to invest in a leg roller to make sure we get every bit of meat out of every single lobster leg, or a mince machine to mince up all the good edible meat from within the body that gets thrown away, we've been able to create valuable markets for those products. And then on the shell, which you can't eat, when we dry and crush that, we can sell that easily as fertilizer. And now we're working on, second and third order uses that can go into bioplastics or medical uses. Can be used as antimicrobial treatments for clothing, so you don't have to wash them as frequently, and so you don't treat clothes with silver ion that leaches out into waterways. All these things help the environment, and they make you money. So I think one key thing to remember, though, is you're not going to snap your fingers and do all those things at once. And so if you just set the goal of being better about waste without setting bite-sized incremental goals for how you can improve each year, you're never going to do anything because it's going to seem overwhelming. So you can't pursue perfection right away. You just have to figure out what changes you can make each year that will make you a little bit less wasteful, hopefully make you a little bit more money along the way, and just keep moving forward.
That's great. And that's terrific. And you actually skipped ahead to one of my next future questions about how to get started. But, it was a good point you brought up about processing. Maybe the term is something like preserving or, retaining the value of these foods through canning and things like that, if processing is bad. And I would also say the danger of working with a group like you who are already sort of moving ahead on the curve of paying attention to food waste is, then you talked about saving money on the composting bill, but you have already moved from landfilling. So your trash bill, you have probably lowered by separating out and composting, which is usually a lower cost option. So, you're not even talking, that savings already by moving to composting your organics has been a savings. And then if you can further reduce it by reducing that quantity. So, terrific examples. Thank you. So, and Zoe, what about Allagash?
Yeah, I think Natalie and Ben brought up so many great points that I definitely can see happening through Allagash as well. I mean, even just the landfill bill. One of our biggest sources of waste is our spent grain, which comes from the process of brewing our beers. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of spent grain each year. That is, now we actually send it, a farmer comes and picks up that spent grain, and then they take that spent grain and then give it to other farmers in the state of Maine to sell that to their cattle for feed. If we didn't do that, that would have been a very, very big landfill bill and a lot of time as well. But I also like the point that Ben brought up that, this is not something that happened overnight. Allagash has been around since 1995. Back then, we were, it was much more hands-on and time intensive, and just taking it small pieces at a time and just doing what you can with the resources you have is a step always in the right direction. And not only will it find you opportunities to save money, to make connections in your community and meet really amazing people that's going to benefit from this byproduct or food waste that you might have. But there's lots of opportunities to maybe save money as well. There are definitely some areas as well where we're actually paying for people to come and take these products from us, such as our spent yeast, which can be combined with trub, which is a byproduct from the brewing process, which is hops, spices, fruit, proteins that are really not valuable, but they're great fertilizer. So we do pay someone to come and take that product from us. And we could put it in the landfill, but that doesn't really feel so great, and it's not the right thing to do. So we make it a priority to actually pay someone to come and take that, and then they can benefit from that product as a fertilizer. So I think really it is kind of, doing what's right and what feels good to you in the best way that you can with the resources that you have at that time. And, your business is first, just like beer is our main priority, but those other pieces will grow throughout your business.
Yes, that's, terrific to hear some of the things you're doing. I did have an opportunity to talk to Rob Todd, though, at the beginning when we were working on the research part of this project, and talking about taking small steps. I remember that he mentioned to me that from the very first year, he looked at the dumpster that you guys used for your trash hauling, and obviously it was a pretty big expense on the expense sheet. And he, just thought, like, if they could continue to grow the business, as you guys have exponentially grown your business, but really try to focus on not growing the trash. So he was saying, 10 years later, they were still using that same single dumpster for this landfilled trash after, this growth of business. So I thought, that's probably a very easy way to kind of measure, and, you've got a lot of things going on, but you can see that dumpster. And if 10 years later that you're still in the same amount of trash and your business has grown by leaps and bounds, you're probably doing the right thing. So I think, it's a great way to proceed. I know that, and I think the other thing that should be mentioned about all your organizations is you've all sort of said it, the collaborative nature, that you've been able to do these things because of the collaborations with others in your community. And I think maybe the Portland Chamber is really an example of that, trying to promote this collaboration, really helping all companies to learn what you've learned and to sort of help each other move down this path. So, I would just really want to call out that great collaborative spirit that has really helped you all. So, and speaking of collaboration, in doing this work, you all have organizations and teams of people, and everybody knows about labor costs and rising labor costs. And if you always loved your teams and your people and knew how valuable they are, even today, more valuable. So to do this kind of food waste work, you have got to, have the support of your teams, of your people. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you do this in this challenging labor environment. How does food waste and this food waste work sort of, how is that a factor in sort of your labor situation? So maybe Ben, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, sure. It is absolutely a challenge to get, large teams sort of focused around these things. And I think there are sort of three things that we think about in that light. One is honestly money talks. to everyone. So what we've done is actually provide bonuses for yield. So if you're picking lobster and you're letting some of that lobster go on the floor or stay stuck in the shell, and that's not turned into food that people can eat, you're not going to make those yield bonuses that you get if you're really diligent about getting every single ounce of lobster into, the food stream. So, I don't mean to say people are mercenary, they don't care, but it's just a fact that if folks can make more money by reducing food waste, and we can share in the benefit that the company gets from having less food waste and having more soluble product, then that's a great way to get people motivated. Another thing I'll say is it's important to make it easy. I was literally just in our restaurant kitchen here with one of Susanne's students, and we were just looking at and talking about just the ergonomics of how food gets treated and how food waste gets treated. So, where are your trash cans versus your compost bins, and how can you make it physically easy to put food that falls on the floor into compost as opposed to putting it in the trash? Because you can stand there when we're not open and everything looks easy, and then when you have 200 people seated, everything looks very, very different. So making sure that your team just has the tools and the ability to easily do whatever it is they need to do to first reduce food waste and then make sure that waste does go to the best channel it possibly can go to is super important. And then the last thing I'll say is just, employees these days really don't want to wind up living in an absolute burning hellfire of a planet in a couple of years. So there is just intrinsic motivation right now for people who want to do right by the environment and want to make changes to their behavior at work and at home so that we don't all burn up. And I think finding individuals who are particularly passionate about that and helping them be champions for that cause and model what we want to see for the entire team and finding ways to incentivize that is always a great play. And it is those internal leaders. If you're not there every day, who's there every day? Who's going to kind of lead the charge and get the team rallied around, making sure we make the best use of every ounce we can.
Those are some really great ideas. I love the one about just simply making it easier to do the right thing. We know that works in education in all sorts of areas, but it's really something every business leader can do, is just think about the process and make it easy to do the right thing. So thanks for sharing that. How about Natalie in your organization?
Yeah, I would say I really agree with Ben in terms of a lot of people do really care about working for sustainable organizations. And we try to really hire people who are excited about that work and excited about what we're trying to do. And I think one of the really exciting things for us is that a lot of soup kitchens especially have a really set menu, and it's like a pretty standard American diet. And, this is not what it is, but as an example, like hot dogs one day, hamburgers the next, mac and cheese the next day. By working with all of these ingredients at the end of their life, we have so much more flexibility and creativity, and our staff has so much more ownership over the meals. So instead of opening a bunches of pre-made boxed macaroni and cheese, they can walk through our pantry and see different items and decide what they want to do with it. So there's a lot more creativity built into the job by working with these things. And we also have a really incredible team of chefs that see the ingredients we have and are able to turn them into exciting offerings. And so we're kind of a unique situation where we're preparing meals in the way that a farm to table restaurant often does, and seasonally changing based on the donations and what's coming out of farms, but for low income meals, which is really a really exciting aspect of it as well. And then I would say one of our chefs described the work that we do as making staff meal for the city of Portland. So staff meal is often the spare bits and the ends that are left in restaurant refrigerators. And basically we're taking the leftovers from the Portland community, from all of the local different organizations, whether that's restaurant or farm or grocery store. And we're taking those ingredients and we're kind of giving them a new life and turning them into a new meal for our clients. So I think it is really about hiring people that are excited and passionate about that as well. But I also think that, it's a lot more exciting to work with food in a tangible way like this, as opposed to just having set menus, opening cans. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of exciting opportunity that's built into it as well.
That is a terrific, I mean, for anybody who's got a creative business or creative people in your business, to see the food waste opportunity as a way to unlock creativity instead of viewing it as, oh, what are we going to do with these leftovers? It's instead, it's, what can we create out of these fantastic ingredients? So it's really a great lesson, great sharing for everyone. Thank you. And Zoe, how about at Allagash?
Yeah, you two just shared so many amazing ideas that just like even got me thinking of some other things as well. There's lots of people at Allagash who are work in production who are really more closely involved with the beer waste side of that food waste, but lots of people are not seeing that. So we're very focused kind of on that whole organizational level, how to keep people thinking about this. And I think right off the bat, you both, Ben and Natalie, mentioned this, hiring people who are passionate, who care about the environment, and creating a company culture that's really focused around that. So this year we updated our core values, and one of those core values is caring for our environment and our communities. It states right there to everyone who joins our team that we are going to be caring for our environment, and we're going to be making choices that are going to have positive impacts on the environment in our communities, which is, that's involved there. Offering volunteer opportunities is the one thing that we can do. Let's see, the Locker Project is going to be a charitable partner in August in our tasting room. So that's a chance right there for people to better understand food insecurity in the state of Maine and food waste. And that's a really big issue. So kind of just seeing firsthand and getting more educated. And I really like how Ben mentioned the making it easy piece. We have compost bins all over the brewery, in every department, in every space, making it really easy for people to just put it right there in that green bin, and they don't have to think about it or where it goes or anything like that. And, we take that same thinking right into our tasting room with the front-facing public. So offering compost bins in that space, making sure utensils, things like that are compostable, and having really clear signage, again, just to make it easy for people so they understand it's being composted and why. And just like a fun fact thing too that we do is in our break room, we have a fridge that's called the shared fridge. There's a picture of Cher, the singer, on it, where people are able to share food that they have that maybe they're not going to be able to finish eating, whether it's just yogurt cups or anything like that might be going bad. They can put it in the shared fridge, anything left over from staff events. So it allows a chance for that food to be fully consumed and not composted. And there's lots of hungry people at Allagash all the time. So most of the, I've never seen any food really go to waste there. So that's something fun that we do to keep people full, their tummies full, and to make sure less food is going into the compost.
It's really terrific, great ideas. And I think, I hope our audience, definitely, we're inspired even for our project, some of these things, to make sure that we add them to our list of great solutions for food waste. So thank you for sharing. I don't know, Tommy, I have another question, or if you think it's a good time now to proceed, would you like us to?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that have come in, but if you've got a few more, I think we've got time for you to finish another couple of questions that you've got, and then we'll move into the audience Q&A. And I do want to put a plug in. If you have questions for our panelists or for our moderator, please go ahead and type them into the chat function, and we'll convey them over once we conclude the presentation.
Thanks. Well, I think the other one that might really be an interesting point, and Ben, you already a little bit alluded to it, is how to get started. Okay, we see you guys all in the process of it, and there's all these great things happening, but can you recall maybe the thing that you could share with the audience, like the one simple thing that you did at some point that, like, oh, okay, like I guess this might be a good idea. I guess, this, if you think back, that might have been one of the steps to starting to realize the benefits of, food waste. So, I don't know what jump ball, whoever would like to take this one.
I can start. And my response feels a little silly given that I was just meeting with Susanne about things that we aren't measuring. But the thing that I would say is, as a first step, measure, see how you can take any measurements of what you're wasting compared to, what your inputs are. And that will help you justify any cost or effort that you ultimately are going to put into reducing your waste. Because, as I was saying, if we were measuring yields on that lobster, it's very easy to look at the amount of money we're paying per pound of live lobster in the door and to know that we were only making any revenue off of 25% of that weight. And the ability to kind of recognize that, go out there, see what products might be available that we could create with the rest of the 75%, and then each year measure that difference, gives you a very clear incentive to take action, and then it helps you see how you're doing, and helps you really tag, what benefits you're getting each year as you decrease that waste and increase your usable product. So I think measuring is always a great first step to provide a baseline for yourself.
Yeah, great. And, I guess I would jump in and say, maybe it's a plug for us at the Mitchell Center and our student teams that, if there is an interest, we have a lot of student economists and math majors and, who are always looking for real world opportunities to make a difference. And those kinds of tracking projects and measuring, even if you don't have any idea of where you might start with the tracking, measuring, then you're 100% right. Actually, your answer couldn't have been more textbook, which is tracking and measuring is the place to start. And if anybody needs some help, feel free to reach out to the Mitchell Center because we would be happy to find students to help in that project. So what else how else can people get started?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, like as Ben mentioned, again, like the tracking and recording is so valuable. I feel like to be able to show staff, to be able to show partners, to be able to show the progress of what you're doing. But my personal philosophy is to start small with one specific focus. So when I took over as food programs director at Preble Street, I started with a small project like the peanut butter and jelly project. And I shared it with staff and I talked it up and I was very excited about it. We prepare around 4,000 peanut butter and jellies a week to be distributed around the community in a variety of different ways. And traditionally that was with very low cost peanut butter and jelly, often high in sugar and different fatty oils and things like that. And so but we also received thousands of pounds of berries throughout the summer. So we transitioned as a starting project of preparing all of our peanut butter and jelly from scratch. And that gave us a little bit of flexibility. We were saving all of that money by preparing those items from scratch. We were increasing the nutrition of the meals. People on staff were learning how to make peanut butter and jelly for the first time. Some of them had never made these things before. And it was a really exciting way to get people invested in the work and then to be able for them to identify other small leverage points. So for us, the peanut butter and jelly was an easy leverage point because it's something that we were spending $500 a week approximately on. And then that $500 could be pivoted towards buying different ingredients that played a stronger role in staff meals, like being able to buy more spices, being able to actually buy vanilla. So I really like doing small little projects like that because it can get people really excited and passionate about the work. And then they start noticing other little things that you can make adjustments for in terms of sustainability as well.
I'm so glad that you shared that example. I love it. And because it really exemplifies the triple bottom line, you saved money, you also improved the health, the quality actually of the product that you were selling. And, of course, by not having them go to landfill, you're, eliminating those greenhouse gases. So, so I guess, the idea is a small, very, exemplary project that everyone can relate to and understand. So that's a great idea. So thanks for sharing. And Zoe?
Yeah. Again, just echoing what Natalie and Ben said, measuring, recording, sharing that information. It'll help you, better understand too, are there ways or even ingredients that maybe you could be a little bit more lean on to make sure that you're not over purchasing something that's then not going to be fresh any longer. So just being kind of aware of all those pieces. And one thing that came to my mind when Natalie was just talking about starting small. Yeah, you don't need to do this overnight, like we've talked about. Just start with something small, pilot a program, get people involved. We have a green team at Allagash, which got started, I think, 14 years ago. And it was probably just a group in the beginning, just of like 3 or 4 employees who are passionate about the environment. Getting people involved from different departments or different areas or different focuses will allow you to see opportunities that maybe you as an individual couldn't see before. So having something, really could just be 2 people who are passionate about this, who are just going to look and talk about these ideas, can actually make a difference. And things can get done, even if it's slowly, even if it's small things, it can happen.
I think that's a great idea and interesting, and relates back to the labor question too, how to engage them. So interesting of an optional green team, this is not a required program. It's not something that everybody has to do as part of their job, but look, if it's interesting. And I think I read actually in your bio that, now Allagash looks to the green team for opportunities. So, again, it doesn't have to be a top-down thing. This group is saying, hey, we've noticed that there might be a chance over here to do something. And what better way to get buy-in than actually have the idea come from your own team. So I think, it's a great example. So thank you so much, all 3 of you, for sharing today. And I'm sure we have questions from our audience. So Tommy, I'll maybe let you take it now.
Sure. And again, thank you to Susanne, Zoe, Ben, and Natalie for another great presentation in this series. If there are further questions after the event today, we do encourage people to send them through to chamber@portlandregion.com, and we'll do our best to get our presenters and moderator to answer it. But the first question that we have is from Francois Amar, and it's specifically for Ben. Have you pursued some new and upcoming opportunities to use lobster shell as a biomaterial feedstock or lobster blood as a bioceutical?
Thanks for that question. The world of lobster shell is an extremely exciting one. These are probably the globe's most magical animals, in that basically every part of them has some incredible use you wouldn't think of. So starting with lobster blood, we do supply lobster blood to a skincare company called Marin, who's done some amazing things with a cream that I know has helped folks with eczema in the past. So that is a pretty cool use, and we're always open to other uses for lobster blood as well. With lobster shell, so we dry and crush that, we pulverize it, and the vast majority of what we produce right now becomes fertilizer. So it's a step above compost, in that it goes directly into fertilizer uses and often replaces chemicals or petroleum-produced fertilizers that are really not healthy for the environment. However, we have a bunch of different pilots with other shell uses as well. We are talking to one group that would extract the protein for a nutraceutical use that I believe can lower blood pressure, cholesterol, and potentially be anti-diabetic. Another use that is around bioplastics, so biodegradable replacements for the kind of plastic disposables that folks use every day. And another that I mentioned earlier around getting the chitosan from that shell and using that in clothing production that fights odor, so that, again, you don't have to wash your clothing as often. Most of the carbon footprint of clothing comes from actually laundering it at home more than producing it initially. So anything that can be done to reduce the amount you need to wash your clothes is always beneficial. And that's really just a short list on a long list of what can be done with the chitin and chitosan that you can extract from lobster shells. So there's a lot of work to still be done there.
Thanks, Ben. Maybe another question that's probably going to put you back on the spot, you and Zoe. Are there any value-added products that are made from waste that's generated by your businesses?
I can start here, Ben, because I know you just talked. So that's a great question. For us, not other than the fact that we're, giving our spent grain to farmers for cattle feed, spreading that spent yeast as fertilizer onto hayfields. That is kind of where those products are going. There's been in the past where some of those spent grain or some of that spent grain was actually made into dog treats, which is, I know some breweries do that as like part of their business. We just don't have the facilities for that, but it's always a great option.
I'll just say, in addition to everything we talked about with lobster shell, of course, this depends on your definition of waste. But if you are talking about what we would have considered waste in 2013, if you go into Whole Foods or Shaw's and you see Luke's Lobster mac and cheese in the frozen seafood aisle, Luke's Lobster cakes, or Luke's Lobster bisque, those all contain mince from the body cavity of the lobster and leg meat from the legs of the lobster, things that would have typically been thrown away that we've been able to extract and actually use in some of our most successful consumer products. So yeah, absolutely. Things that otherwise could have been wasted are now becoming really core products for us.
Some really cool things you guys are doing with oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Tommy. I was just going to quickly add that we do use fruit in some of our beers, and we will use that as many times as we can in different products just to get the full life out of the fruit before we fully compost it. So there are some products that might have fruit that had been used once before to give that beer some fruit quality. So there's opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and I think, Zoe, that some of the fruits and things that you guys use, I believe, come from surplus. So it's not your own byproducts that you're using, but you're actually getting some surplus from, some of the growers and things like that to be able to then produce the beer. So that is a terrific example too. And I don't know, Tommy, maybe, Natalie, with the food hub that Rebel Street's working on, that might be something, kind of a bigger scale way of looking at byproduct production. I mean, if maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Natalie?
Yeah, absolutely. We won't, because it's a nonprofit, we won't have the traditional model of value-added products, but they will essentially be the same thing. So we're working on a new food security hub that'll allow us to process around 40,000 pounds of produce a day, process and preserve using a variety of different preservation techniques, so that all of the food that we're receiving, especially at the height of summer, we'll be able to process. So that will equate to homemade tomato sauce for clients in their food boxes, and homemade jams and homemade peanut butter. It'll whatever is available. So like whether that's a chutney, like seasonally, we'll have a huge variety of offerings. So that might just be blanched and preserved broccoli that you can eat that was grown locally that we'll put in clients' boxes in the wintertime. It might be some sauces. So yeah, it really opens up, like having the necessary processing equipment, I think, is a huge component of all of this as well. And it allows us to really expand what we're doing and work with even more reclaimed ingredients and recovery products.
Yes, maybe Zoe can get some of those spent grains and
Yeah.
you might have some processing opportunities there.
We do have another question that came through. Let me make sure I read this correctly. For businesses that are just beginning to consider a food waste strategy, How would you advise them to get started? Are there any great resources in Maine or elsewhere that you would want to point to? And maybe a little bit deeper, how do you manage the food waste in your own kitchens? Are there any tips? Did I stump him, Susanne?
Couple.
No, I just was going to let, whoever would like to take it. I think all of you, obviously you have answers for this. So whoever would like to, we've been keeping you pretty busy with the questions. So I was going to just see where the recovery was.
Well, I'll take an idea from Zoe for something that Luke needs to do. And I think that the green team that they have and haven't done that for so long, just, that naturally pulls together kind of an interest group within your community of folks who are going to champion these initiatives. And would be really helpful, when I was talking about kind of tapping individuals who are passionate about that, having that kind of shared interest group and having programming and regular check-ins with that group, I think is an amazing idea. And something that I wish we had done when we were kind of embarking on this journey. So that's, I think, a great place to start.
Yeah, another piece that comes to my mind, and this is just a small one as well, is like if you have a internal news flash or some kind of like weekly emails or quarterly emails, sneak some sustainability pieces in there, sneak some information about volunteer opportunities or just like tips and tricks on ways to reduce your food waste. Maybe, doing some research on how to cut down your food waste just even at home. I personally like to save all my veggie scraps and make my own stock. Or make pestos and sauces from just whatever is laying around. So those are some very basic things. But I think a huge piece of it is beginning the conversation and continuing the conversation with inside your company, and then things will blossom from there. And you'll be able to make connections and make change happen.
Yeah, and I would just say, building on that, Zoe and Ben both made some really great points. And I think going back to tracking and recording data, I think if an organization is not really already dedicated to reducing their waste, being able to show how much money they're spending on annual waste removal can be a really or compost removal, even any of the things like that they're increasing expenses on that they could lower, is a really good place to start as an organization, because then you're like, okay, this is a financial incentive. You can find kind of a leverage point to get somebody engaged. And that's for organizations who wouldn't be particularly passionate about it, who need to find that leverage point. But beyond that, I would say like the conversations, like as Zoe had just mentioned, like bringing these things into meetings, even if it's just for 3 minutes, just talking about sustainability, having it be part of the conversation, it becomes a much easier thing for people to adapt to and kind of make part of their overall practice when it's kind of around you all the time and you're learning about it. It becomes part of your natural dialogue anyway.
Those are some really great, thank you. I mean, and your ideas sort of, for those organizations who are less, or sort of newer to the whole topic, I think that, as you said, looking at the bottom line and seeing, how much in communities, families, the waste costs, what people are spending or, wasting in terms of food and food disposal, obviously with the inflation and things like that, it's going up all the time. So if, 6 months ago, this would have been a great internal conversation and start looking at those numbers. I'm sure 6 months today, it's even a more compelling case to get started.
And yeah, sorry, just to add on that as well, like on a home scale, they say that the average home kitchen wastes approximately 30% of all the ingredients that they buy and bring into their home. So overall, they say like 30 to 50% of all of the food that's produced along the supply chain is lost. But if you're in your own home and with the cost of groceries, if you're losing even 10, 20%, that's a pretty significant amount that you're dedicating to, like, that's lost in waste. So like cutting back, like learning to throw things in the freezer, or like to chop up, leave your vegetable stock, throw them into a bag, make stock in the, all of those are huge cost saving things. And they're kind of out of our culture a little bit, but especially with the cost of food now, I think it's really easy to make a case to reduce your waste.
I would also add the tip that my wife would tell you I don't actually follow myself, but an organized fridge is a great way to not waste so much food, because you'll actually be able to see what you have available and what might be, going to go bad before you get to it. And then before you go out shopping, making sure you just actually look through that fridge and see what you got before you go buy new stuff. If your fridge is just a hectic mess, you're going to find yourself like throwing away a lot of old moldy stuff from the back of the fridge pretty frequently. So, doing your best to just get that organized and actually check it more frequently will really help you save money and save waste.
Right.
Well, Suzanne, we've
adding
got
on to
one last
that.
question I think we can probably squeeze in before we wrap it up. Let me pose this one. It was regarding how to make it easy for people to reduce waste. It seems like there might be some education that's needed before it becomes a natural reflex. Natalie talked about signage, and it seems like you have people on your teams who are very thoughtful about this issue to begin with. But how do you educate your teams, and why is reducing waste such an important priority?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is a lot of conversations around these things. I think Zoe and Ben both mentioned making these things as user-friendly and as easy. We work really hard on waste, but if somebody has to walk 1,000 feet to find a compost bin, a lot of people are not going to do that. So I think making those things as easy and as accessible, so it's not as much of a choice as like, should I do this? It's just like a natural reaction. There's a sign for trash, there's a sign for compost, a sign for recycling. So making it as user-friendly, I think, is a really good way to start. And again, yeah, the same thing of just like including this in all of the discussions. Like, I think it's really exciting if we are able to prepare a meal, for example, with say 5,000 pounds of something that we received donated that was going to go bad, and then sharing that we were able to process that and turn it in to this number of meals. So I think it always comes back to like a mixture of education and finding points of excitement and how to get people engaged around these things. And some people are just naturally not going to be as interested in it. So that's why I think make it as easy as possible as well.
Great.
I'd give a quick shout out for a company called Opus that we've started working with the last couple of years. They're a micro learning company, and basically the way they work is you create lessons, and it communicates with your team via text or WhatsApp. If you have a significant new Mainer population in your company, the way we do, that English is not their first language, it's very easy to translate your message from English to a bunch of other languages that are available within the system. But basically, you can take a goal like, let's get our team to focus on food waste and make sure that they're, saving as much as possible and putting the rest in the right places. You could chunk that up into micro lessons that they'll receive when they clock in the morning, just over a series of text response chains and little quizzes and things like that. It really helps to just be able to break up that learning in an instance where they're on the clock, but they're maybe not in the midst of their job yet. It's been a really useful service, so check that out if you're in a food industry or other company with large teams.
Well, thanks again to all of you, and again, really interesting presentation. To Suzanne, Zoe, Ben, and Natalie, and all your organizations for doing the great work that you're doing on this topic. Just a reminder that today's presentation has been recorded. It's going to be available for replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. A copy of today's presentation with a replay link and any additional details or resources will be included in a post-event email that you'll receive later in the month. A quick plug for all of our upcoming Chamber events. Be sure to check the Chamber website calendar for all of our great events. Even better, sign up for our weekly email newsletter when you're there. Thanks again to our partners at UMaine for this second presentation of our three-part series, Food for Thought. Join us again on Wednesday, June 22nd at noon for our final workshop in this series. The topic is what's so special about Maine food? Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day, get outside, and enjoy your week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you guys.